Hey guys, welcome back to the Unleashed podcast. I'm your host, Ryan Reger, and in today's episode, I'm bringing you a snippet from our Unleashed community, one of the calls that we had very recently, and it's in it is Antonio Thompson talking about process. Have you ever wondered why things take so long, or you've been believing God for something to reach a milestone, to start a business, to just hit some goal, or you're just believing for something that you know He's called you to believe for? Like, why does it take so long? And in this episode, it's going to be really encouraging. Antonio just received his coaching certification, and he just talks about the process that he went through for that and how it took him longer. And we just all go through things, and we're always in a time when we're trusting God for something. And what do you do in that time when you're going through that process, waiting for, to see the end of that thing? I know this will really bless you, so here it is. So tonight, what we're doing is we want to. So Antonio had a great prayer call on Monday that I missed, but I went back and watched it, and he talked about process, and it was very fascinating. And just hearing his story about passing the exam and the process that the Lord led him through to get through that, and how we all go through different things to get to where God's called us. And then it made me think about just, our process of, having kids and my relationship with my wife, and just that, you sometimes wonder, God, when is this going to happen? What's going on here? And so how do you stay in faith and all of that? So, Antonio, do you want to just share some of what's on your heart regarding that? And then I'll ask some questions. We'll have a discussion about it. Well, if it turns out okay, I'll use it for the podcast. If not, there's no pressure on that. But then also just want to have everybody chime in as well on things that they, just whatever stirs in your heart regarding this. But Antonio, I'll let you kick it off.
First of all, good evening, everybody. My name is Antonio Landis Thompson, or some people call me Coach Antonio Landis Thompson. And we had an amazing night on Monday night, and we were talking about process. And this is fresh. This is fresh off of me. But before I get into what process is let me read a definition and say process is a series of actions or steps taken to achieve a particular result or goal. And let me tell you a little bit about my process. Now, that process could be marriage. That process could be financially. That process could be a physical challenge that you want to overcome, probably gain muscle with our coach in here, Mr. Bill, or lose some weight. That process could be writing a book with Honey. That process could be also getting coached by Cynthia. But this came about to me a couple of days ago because about 2019 is when I really started to get into coaching. And I went to a coaching school called Coach U. And I graduated with my so-called degree of my passing my classes to being a coach. But there was a next phase.
Happy for you and so glad that I got this in a phone call and not a text.
Thank you so much, Kimberly. Whoa, I love your voice. And what happened was that the next step was to actually get the credential part of it. And after I went through school, I didn't want to, I was putting it off for years and years and years. And finally, my wife, couple years ago, well, not couple years ago, she kept telling me, she said, you should get credential. And I intentionally, before I went to a school to study coaching, I intentionally studied with a school that was connected to the International Coaching Federation, that I would have to get my credentials. So this was I thought this out years in advance. And I didn't want to go through it. So I finally made up my mind I'm going to go through it. So I reached out to one of the coaches at my church, and I said, part of the process is that I need a mentor coach to mentor me through this whole process. And she said, Antonio, she said, I'm not a professional coach yet, but she said, here's the process, like the end of the process. She said, but I could connect you with somebody. Now, as I'm speaking, she's now has become a professional coach this year.
Wow.
And then she connect me with this coach, and we got together. He said, okay, Antonio, this is what you want to do. And this was like about a 3-year journey. One of the part of the process was that I had to submit a coaching session that somebody will watch and grade to see if I have the skills and the technique that represent that organization. Here's what I did. First recording, Second recording, third recording, my mentor say, Antonio, we getting there. Fourth recording, fifth recording. At this time, I'm becoming discouraged. I'm really questioning myself. Do I know what I'm really doing as a coach? I'm using my uniqueness that God gave me, but yet, like he said, taking this exam is just like going to the driving school. You have to pass that exam. They don't care if you drove in the Bahamas or you drove in India. If you're taking this exam for the United States, you have to meet the requirements. So the sixth recording. Finally, on the seventh recording, he said, Antonio, I think we're ready. So after the seventh recording, I have to submit it to the International Coaching Federation with his approval, with his signature. They have to verify that this is legitimate. He's a coach and what have you. I submitted that in November or December. And here's how God worked. Here's the backstory. The recording should have been at least 20 minutes. I was so excited coaching and recording. When I submitted the recording that day, I said, the recording is 19 minutes and a couple seconds. I say, oh no, Antonio. So what I did, I reached out to the International Coaching Federation. I said, I have a situation. I said, I submitted a recording and I realized, in which I knew, the recording, the minimum should be 20 minutes for somebody to try to get an understanding of your coaching skills. They say, well, that's the requirement, but it's up to the one who reviews your recording. But what's going to happen, they say the one who reviews your recording, they might not grade it because they might say it didn't meet the standards. They say what you'll have to do is resubmit. The person who got my recording first, they didn't grade it because it didn't meet 20 minutes. So they reached out to me and said, would you like to do a new recording? No, I don't want to do a recording because this is the seventh time. I said, I want to resubmit this recording. They said, okay. So I resubmitted that recording in December, January, February, March, April, May. Around May, June, I reached out to them and I said, I just want to follow up on the recording that I resubmitted. They said, oh, our apologies. They said, we'll get back to you in about 2 to 3 weeks. They got back to me in about 3 days and says, your recording has been approved. So now that gave me the green light to take the exam.
Wow.
And so that's everything I was focusing on, my lead magnet, focusing on my book and everything. I just stopped that. And then I started focusing on just studying the exam. And then a couple of weeks ago, the team, a leash prayer team, they prayed for me. But also when Bill prayed for me, there was something special when he prayed for me that night. I felt like there was a special grace put on my life just to take that exam. I can't explain everything that happened. All I knew, something happened. And I knew something happened when Bill prayed, because I reached out to him the next day and I say, Bill, I said, when you prayed for me that night to take my exam, I say, I felt like something happened.
Yeah.
I got up Wednesday morning. I told them this in the prayer room. Now, you would think on the exam morning, you will have everything prepped. I got up early to study some notes. The thing that I took longest to do on my exam, and I encourage nobody never to do this, I was trying to figure out what I was going to wear. I was so focused on my exam, I was trying to figure out what I'm going to wear in the exam room. Do I wear a long sleeve? Because I want to wear a long sleeve because I don't want to get into the exam room and it's cold. And they say, you can't bring no jacket in here. And I was like, Tunio, it's about 30 minutes you need to get out of here. And before I left, I say, Holy Spirit, I say, I need your spirit right now as I go into this exam. And when I got into the exam, the lady who's in charge of the exam, she was so nice. Even if you was anxious or nervous, the way she greeted you, do you need anything? The bathroom was right there. I even did a survey that really made me so relaxed. So I went into the exam, and everything I studied on the exam, when I got into the exam, I'm seeing like some questions like, wait a minute, this don't, I study everything that I'm supposed to study, but it looked kind of a little foreign to me. So I didn't want to freak out. So I said, Holy Spirit, just lead me. So I took the exam. Long story short, the minute you end the exam, you go to the examiner who's in charge, they print out, and she looked at my paper. She said, and I said, I passed. She said, you passed? I said, yes. I went into the bathroom. Like tears wanted to come out of my eyes. I texted my wife, one of my friends, and also Ryan was one of the persons I reached out to first also, and Bill. And I was thinking about the process that I went through. I knew God called me to be a life coach. But if God, to be honest with you, if God told me, I'll be honest with you, I'll be very transparent. If God told me the process that I had to go through, family, I don't know if I wanted to do it. Because I never saw that I was going to get my recording rejected 6 times and not approved on the 7th time. I didn't know my process of the credential part was going to take about 2 to 3 years. Now, it don't have to take that long. It's just that was my process that I was going through. Now, after I went through all of that process, I am so grateful that my mentor coach did not approve my first coaching session. I'm so grateful that he rejected the 2nd, the 3rd, the 4th, the 6th, because now what that did, that gave me a deeper understanding of the gift and calling that is on my life. Mm-hmm. Now I have a better understanding of what coaching is all about. Now I can show better for my clients. I can show better for people. And I'm starting to realize, I was like, you know what? The credential was just the icing on the cake. Mm. What God was really showing me, the meat of this whole journey was the process. Ooh. Like we graduated from college and we get that degree and we put that in our office or we put that in our classroom or what have you. But when you look at it, it was the process through college. Late nights, papers may be rejected by your professor, may have gone through a girlfriend or boyfriend breakup. You got to deal with emotions in college. You're dealing with if you from a different country, you have to deal with moms not there. Like when I was in college for the first time and I had a toothache, my toothache was different in college. When mommy was not there, it was a different feeling. And then I started to talk about, I was talking about my friend this day. I said, you know what? That when we look at process, sometimes we look at it as something being bad. And I said, when you look at process, it's a beautiful thing. And I said, God, Jesus came into this world, right? He was God in flesh. But Jesus even had to go through a process. Mm. And he didn't go through the process just so he could be an example for us. He had to go through the process. Think about this. Jesus fasted 40 days and 40 nights before he went into, that was part of the process to get him to go to the cross. He couldn't bypass that. Yes. Right? We sometimes look at death as being such a bad thing, but guess what? Part of the process of life is that in order for us to be absent from this body, we have to die. Because if we don't physically die, we are going to live here forever. And part of God's process, it's like, wow, if you look at death as being a process for you to be absent from this body, to be present with the Lord, then the process of I see Lily, Kelly Norton, then the process of death look different for you. When you go through the process of, one day that you're going to die, but through that process, you say, let me get a will or let me get some insurance. Your assurance to yourself is that when you transition, that your children will be fine. So therefore you look at that differently. And I realized that for me, if we get an understanding of what the purpose of the process is, like if I got an understanding up front that the purpose of the process of me going through this coaching process was God was developing me to be a better coach. And so also to be a better representation of representing his kingdom. Because here's the thing, I probably could have gotten a different mentor coach and they could have approved my first or second coaching session, but I would not be the coach that I am today showing up in front of you. Mm. And I want to encourage you that each of us, now here's the thing, and then I'm going to throw it out to you guys or to Ryan. God has a process for each of us to go through, but here's the thing about that. We don't have to accept it. Mm. So he lays a process out. He said, okay, Miss Kimberly, this is your process to be an educator. Honey, this is your process to be a publisher. Cynthia, this is your process to be a coach. Bill, this is your process. John, this is your process. Scott, this is your process. Ryan, this is your process to build Unleash Global. This is the process I have for you. But it's up to you if you accept it. If you don't accept it, God don't get upset with us, right? It's just that if we don't accept God's process, we will never become 100% what he designed us to be. Mm-hmm. That's the danger of not accepting the process. I didn't have to accept this process to go through that process of becoming a credential coach. But if I did not accept God's process, I would not become the coach representing his kingdom. Mm. And that's when I started to realize, wow. Now God, we know God process is the best process. So he lays out this road. It's a road to go this way, and it's a road to go this way. And then you know what I realized too? We wake up one day, and we don't like where we at in life. And I'm putting myself in there. And we say, oh, keep praying for me, keep praying for me. The question is, did we embrace that process that God put before us? Now, like I say, if God shows us everything pertaining to our process, we might not accept the challenge. That's where faith comes in. That's where the faith comes in, because he's going to carry you from point A to point B. And we have to trust him. But once we go through that process, we become that diamond. A diamond has to go through all of that pressure. It's a process. You might look at somebody and they say, oh, they have a beautiful marriage. You don't know the process they went through. You don't know the arguments they went through. You don't know the disagreements they went through. You don't know the nights they probably slept in different rooms together. But they decided, okay, even though we might not like this, let's embrace this process. So I challenge you today, look at process as being God's refinery, God's fire that he's putting you in to become that diamond. That process is not a bad thing. When we understand and know the purpose of process and we start to embrace that, then God said, okay, I could work with Ryan. I could work with Antonio. So give me a whole different perspective of what process is to you. Thank you.